Welcome back to AC Automotive. Today let's go perform a wheel alignment on this 2015 Honda CR-V. Once test driving the vehicle, we confirmed that the symptom for the misalignment was that the vehicle drifted to the right when straightening the steering wheel. Other symptoms can include uneven or chopped tire tread wear and an off-centered steering wheel. With the vehicle driven onto the alignment rack, we will first choke the back wheel, shift the vehicle into neutral, and finally turn off the ignition. It's always important before performing a wheel alignment that the vehicle's tire pressure, the ride height, and suspension components are thoroughly inspected, and that subsequent repairs should be made if necessary. The factory's criteria must be met before performing the wheel alignment just to ensure its success and its accuracy. Now that we have this CR-V in the air, we can roll it onto our slip plates, which will help us make our adjustments later on, and then we can scan the vehicle's VIN in order to let the alignment machine know what we're working with here. The next step will be to attach these wheel sensors to all four tires in order for the alignment machine to use them as a point of reference for our adjustments later on. So now that we have all of our factory specifications present, we can start aligning the CR-V. And so we click start, and this boom arm will come down to meet the four-wheel sensors at their relative height to set up our reference points. And so finally we can begin the alignment process. First is to perform some wheel compensations, which involves rolling the vehicle forwards and backwards, and then turning the front wheels side to side to give the alignment machine a sense of where our current alignment measurements are and if they need to be adjusted at all. Right before the side wheel compensation, I'm just going to set up a brake pedal depressor in order to ensure that the CR-V remains absolutely still and that my measurements don't get disturbed at all when making any adjustments. Now that that's done, I can unlock all the slip plates on this alignment rack, which allows the vehicle's suspension components to move freely when making adjustments without any resistance from the rack itself. All of this compensation is done to account for potential inconsistencies with the vehicle's frame or proportions, which could lead to an inaccurate alignment if not caught and fixed in advance. For example, if this vehicle were by chance in an accident without my knowledge and everything looked okay at a glance, but the frame turned out to be bent, the alignment machine could catch it for me based off of its measurements before I went any further. So now that our compensation is complete and everything looks okay, we can center and lock the steering wheel and begin our adjustments. So which suspension components are we actually adjusting? Well, that's a great question. It really depends on the type of suspension and vehicle you have. There are three adjustments at play when it comes to an alignment: camber, caster, and toe. Camber is the angle of the tire relative to the ground. Caster is the tilt of the axis that the wheel steers around, and toe is the measurement of how much the wheel is turned in or out from a straight ahead position. Like I said, whether or not you can make adjustments to these angles depends on the type of suspension that the vehicle is equipped with. If adjustments cannot be made conventionally, the use of shims or replacement of components is required. The only two constants with alignment angles is that the caster in the rear wheels can never be adjusted, nor is it present, and that the toe in the front wheels can generally always be adjustable. In this case, the only adjustable angle on this CR-V is the front and rear toe, which, as you can see, needs some adjusting and is the biggest contributing factor to our drifting symptom. Unfortunately, the rear camber and front caster is not adjustable, and so the customer will have to get certain worn out suspension components replaced, even though they may not be loose or broken, such as rear coil springs or front struts, in order to fix those alignment angles. But we can still work with what we got. An important thing to remember is to always start by adjusting the rear angles because they do affect the front angles in the end. So I started adjusting the left rear toe by freeing up and turning the toe adjusting eccentric bolt, and I'll do the same thing for the right rear just to center it up. In doing so, I actually ended up messing up my right front toe, and so I just recentered it by loosening and turning the inner tie rod. Of course, making sure to tighten everything back up in the end. And now that my toe is centered and is in the green, that's all she wrote for this alignment, and we can now take this CR-V for a test drive once on the ground and our hands are clean. Turns out it drove nice and straight, which is exactly what we want to see. The customer, however, will have to replace items related to the rear camber and front caster to avoid other bad alignment symptoms, stuff like uneven or premature tire wear. That's all for now, folks. Thanks a lot for watching.